and the prime minister is denying what happened, his ambassador is denying what happened. I guess people who can lie about a genocide feel licensed to lie even about the illegal detention and threatening of American citizens. But what is outrageous is if this happened anywhere else in the world, it would be a massive international incident, and it would require the government to immediately arrest the people who did this and to investigate the soldiers who did this.
You know,
if this story is true, then what happened here should concern every single American, regardless of where you stand politically. According to Congressman Ro Khanna, he was detained by Israeli settlers carrying American-made M4 rifles. Not by Iran, not by Hamas, and not by some hostile foreign government, but by people armed with weapons funded in part by American taxpayers. And what makes this story even more astonishing is his claim that when the IDF arrived, they sided with the settlers. Despite the incident allegedly unfolding in front of witnesses, including a New York Times photographer. In this clip, Ro Khanna doesn't hold back. He recounts exactly what happened and uses that experience to level some serious criticism at Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government's handling of settler violence. Now, if you're new here, I'm Bradley Hostin, and this is The Bradley Hostin Show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more news commentaries. I need you guys to stick with me until the very end, because after we watch this clip, I want to explain why I think this interview raises some very uncomfortable questions about accountability, America's relationship with Israel, and why this story deserves far more attention than it's getting. As usual, let's watch the clip, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts afterwards.
California, Ro Khanna. Congressman Khanna, welcome to Uncensored again. You hit the news because you were detained, you said, in the West Bank in Israel for 90 minutes by armed Israeli settlers during a visit there last week. You posted on X, Israeli settlers brandishing American-made M4s detained me and other Americans on my trip to Palestine. When the IDF arrived, they sided with the settlers and continued our detention. They made a huge mistake. Now, you were visiting a small Palestinian village that was abandoned after escalating attacks from settlers and then demolished. You were eventually allowed to continue your journey, but this has created a huge firestorm, obviously. A spokesman for the Israeli military said it received a report of Israeli civilians unlawfully blocking the vehicles of foreign nationals and members of the news media near the village. Troops were dispatched to reopen the road. The spokesman said the military disputed its soldiers had participated in blocking the exit and said the identity of the armed civilian was being reviewed. And when Benjamin Netanyahu was asked about this, he said this.
We're a country of laws, and people who break the law, we take them to court. In the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, we've had thousands of attempted attacks and warnings against terrorist activities, against innocent Israelis, families, mother with their children driving along the road. They're stopped by terrorists and they kill them. And this has happened again and again and again. There is a vigilante effort, not by the settler community. They're 99.9%, law-abiding citizens. I don't want vigilantes of any kind, and we are working to put them under the law. But I think if we put things in perspective, we should see that we have thousands of attacks and some few, but obvious breaking of the law. Then we apply the full measure of the law against them.
Now, what's interesting about this is that Haaretz, which is one of the big newspapers over there, wrote an editorial on the incident in which it was entitled, Ro Khanna got the VIP version of what West Bank Palestinians face every day. And certainly there have been myriad reports of appalling behaviour by Israeli settlers against Palestinians, very aggressive expansion of settlements, and repeated evidence in these reports of the IDF siding with the settlers, even when they appear to be committing crimes. So, Haaretz is not wrong here by categorising this as being you, as an American over there, obviously encountering what Palestinians get all the time. So a long-winded intro, my apologies for that. But Ro Khanna, your response in particular to what Netanyahu said there?
Well, I appreciate your laying out all the facts. I am just stunned that Americans are detained by vigilantes. A foreign government cooperates with those vigilantes, and the American factual account is being disputed. I don't understand it. I mean, there was a New York Times photographer there. It's not just my testimony. It is the testimony of Israelis who were with me. It is the testimony of security forces. It was written up in detail in Reuters and the New York Times. And the prime minister is denying what happened. His ambassador is denying what happened. I guess people who can lie about a genocide feel licensed to lie even about the illegal detention and threatening of American citizens. But what is outrageous is if this happened anywhere else in the world, it would be a massive international incident, and it would require the government to immediately arrest the people who did this and to investigate the soldiers who did this.
You know, a lot of your critics, as you know, because they've come racing out to criticize you, the Israeli ambassador to the US, Dr. Michael Leiter, said you mischaracterized it. He accused you of visiting the West Bank as a political stunt to distract from your past support of Graham Plattner, the former Maine US Senate candidate accused of sexual assault, and to promote your own presidential run for the White House in 2028. What do you say to that?
Well, he didn't describe any of my 3 previous visits to Israel as political stunts. What bothers them is that I said I wanted to have a Palestinian-led tour through the West Bank. And I informed the Israeli government that I was going. Obviously, I got through the airport. They helped me get back home. But what bothers them is that I said I was going to visit Palestine from a Palestinian perspective. And it's not just about me. They don't want other American politicians to do that. Just today, Piers, there was body camera footage released about this whole incident, which shows that the IDFs were siding with the settlers. And so the ambassador is on national television just lying. Now, their hope is that America just moves on and they can obfuscate the facts. But they're really risking the anger of a lot of people in America because this was how they treated American passport holders.
And what is extraordinary is it comes against a backdrop of Israel getting more and more unpopular globally, but especially in the United States, with nearly 2/3 of US adults now having a negative view of Israel, which is significantly up year on year. I've repeatedly called out members of the Israeli government like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in particular, whose rhetoric and actions, and in particular actually involving the aggressive expansion of settlements on the West Bank and the IDF complicity in that, these guys, they don't seem to care about how unpopular they make Israel if they can have license to achieve their bigger plan, which appears to be expelling all the Palestinians out of Gaza, out of the West Bank, getting rid of maybe up to 1 million people out of southern Lebanon as well now, that they have a grand plan here and they don't really care about global opprobrium for it.
You're absolutely right. It's just the utter arrogance of power. Here's what would happen in a normal situation. Let's say this happened to me in Saudi Arabia or China, not necessarily always aligned with the United States. You would have the head of state or some cabinet member come out and say, we absolutely condemn what happened to Congressman Khanna and the other Americans. We will make sure that we take prosecutorial action against the vigilantes who did this, and we will have an internal investigation. This is not how we do business, and we're sorry that this happened to Americans. And if they did that, it would be a one-day story. But the fact that they are calling into question my credibility, calling into credibility the New York Times photographer, the New York Times journalist, the Israeli citizens who were testifying to this, denying that there was anything wrong. It just shows how arrogant they are to deny things that people are seeing with their own eyes on video.
What do you make as a high-profile American politician?
So let me give you guys my thoughts because I found this interview absolutely fascinating. More than anything else, it raises a question that I think every single American should be asking. If an American congressman says he was detained by armed settlers in a foreign country, shouldn't that automatically be taken seriously? Think about it. If this had happened in China, Saudi Arabia, or Russia, can you imagine the reaction? It would be front-page news. Republicans would be demanding answers. There would be calls for investigations, and Donald Trump would almost certainly be condemning the country involved. But because the allegations involve Israel, the conversation suddenly becomes completely different. That's what I find so interesting. Now, what also caught my attention is that this isn't being presented as simply one person's word against another's. Ro Khanna pointed to witnesses, including a New York Times photographer, and reports from established news organizations covering the incident. Whether people ultimately agree with his conclusions or not, I think it's reasonable to expect those claims to be examined seriously. The other point Ro Khanna made that really stuck with me was this. He argued that if governments aren't held accountable on one issue, people naturally become more skeptical about their statements on other issues as well. Whether you agree with that argument or not, I think it's an important point to think about. And then there's the bigger picture. What really surprised me wasn't just the incident itself. It was the reaction from some people afterwards. Instead of asking, "What happened here?" or "Should we investigate this?" the conversation immediately became about defending one side or attacking the other. To me, that's the wrong approach. If an American elected official says they were detained while carrying out official business abroad, that should be something everyone wants clarity on, regardless of politics. Because at the end of the day, this shouldn't be about Republicans or Democrats. It should be about accountability. And I'll leave you with one final thought. If American taxpayers are funding military assistance overseas, I think it's perfectly reasonable for Americans to ask how that assistance is being used and whether there is sufficient oversight. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more news commentaries. I'll see you guys in the next one.